was privileged enough to get to speak at a conference yesterday, Democratize Quant, put on by Wes Gray, an Alpha Architect, and I was invited to be a discussant. So this is a pretty cool conference. I think most of the conferences you and I go to, at the risk of never getting invited to a conference again, they're pay to play in many ways, right?
Yes.
There's sponsors who buy their way on to panels. I've been fortunate in that I've been invited to speak on a number of panels without having to pay. But they're often like weird product pushes, and I always feel like they're not really all that valuable from an educational perspective. What Wes and his team have done with Democratize Quant for years is they have brought the academic format of a conference to finance. And so the idea is that someone gets up and presents a research paper or a research topic, and then there is a discussant. And the discussant's role is to summarize the key points of the paper, the takeaways, really sort of highlight the important parts. So to make sure everyone keyed in, right? Sort of re-communicate the key points so that if people weren't following the paper in the first place, they could sort of reinterpret it. And then also highlight any potential concerns or areas of conflict within the research or things that they think could have been improved. It's not meant to be combative, but it is meant to be, ideas need to stand on their own. It's nothing personal, but we're here to discuss ideas in an academic way. And Wes reached out to me a little while ago and said, hey, I'd really like you to be the discussant for this research affiliates paper called Reimagining Index Funds. And I knew he was setting me up to jump on a grenade because I'd already read the paper. And I don't want to say I didn't think fondly of it, but I had my concerns about it. And then as I dug deeper into it, I had more and more concerns. And so during the Democratized Quant conference yesterday, as the discussant, I spent probably 90% of the time explaining why I thought the paper had some big potential issues with it. And I don't think it was well received by the participant from Research Affiliates. And then I kind of doubled down. I've tripled down now. I wrote a blog post about it. I wrote a Twitter thread about it. Research Affiliates has actually I just saw before this, replied to my tweet thread saying they'd welcome a discussion at a more appropriate venue, because I guess Twitter is not the appropriate venue to discuss these things.
But your discussion at the Quant conference in long form was not an appropriate venue, or?
I guess not.
But so, okay, before we get into the details of the paper, once again, paradox, right? You got to live this. Allegedly, the point was to Carneades this and argue both sides so people could get a better perspective. And when you argued the other side, people were unhappy with it. It's like, what did you think you were signing up for? Like, is it supposed to be where you're supposed to straw man the other side and still make sure that all the quants are happy? Like,
I know.
What's the point?
I don't know. I will say this time, instead of getting like angry DMs telling me I'm out of touch, I actually got a lot of DMs from people saying they really appreciated that I wasn't pulling punches, that I was willing to engage intellectually and not speak down about the researchers, just say these are things that I'm seeing in the research that I think might not be what the researchers intended, or I don't necessarily agree with their explanation. I think there could be something else going on here that warrants further review, but that's not always taken super well in this industry, right? Like when you spend the time to write the research and you're submitting to papers, and look, I don't want to like skirt around this issue. Most of these papers are fluffed up marketing. Like they're selling a product at the end of the day. Like they had launched a product based on this research that they then wrote a summary paper. So for me to say, I think the research is wrong, or there's a big potential hole in the research that wasn't considered by the authors, it's kind of a direct attack on the product, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. By the way, was this the conference where you were supposed to defend the value momentum spread or whatever, not mean reverting? Isn't that the one you volunteered? Was that for this one?
No, I definitely. Someone tried to volunteer me for that, and I said I'm absolutely not doing that because I'm pretty sure Cliff was on the other side of that conversation, and I was not about to tell Cliff Asness why he was wrong.
So, there's so many things you brought up in there that excite me. One is, it's a weird paradox. Once again, I'm going to keep talking about paradoxes today. Apparently, it's like, you know, when you do that research or you have a product or whatever, that's kind of your baby. So you obviously want to defend your ugly baby. But at the same time, people like you and me really want feedback to know if we're wrong. Like, what if I'm missing something? Like, I don't want to put my clients in here and I missed something that was, you know, maybe seemingly obvious to somebody else. and I've got a big hole in that. So you really want somebody to red team a lot of your stuff, but it's hard to do that sometimes when you're the creator or you're pushing that product, right? Because you're going to have a natural inclination of defensiveness. Like, think about like Danny Kahneman, System 1, System 2. Like, it's fine to feel butthurt initially, but you should come around really quickly though to realize, oh, maybe there is some holes. Let's discuss this, and I can get a separate set of eyeballs for free. Because quite frankly, to me, you're doing an invaluable thing for them. Two, you said, I love that we're just going to rip off the Band-Aid here. It's like most of these conferences are pay to play and they're absolutely pointless, and everybody's just circle jerking each other. And we'll get to the conference maybe we're going to next week as well.
But can I just caveat that? Like,
yeah,
the conference itself in many ways,
a different one. Yeah,
often is like, and not saying any particular, but conferences in general, like what's actually on the agenda, I find most of the time isn't worth going to. Hanging out in the lobby is absolutely worth going if you're trying to do business, because everyone will go to some of these so if you pick the conferences you're going to, they can be priceless. But I'm not, like, when I'm going to these conferences, I'm going and I'm setting up meetings all day. I'm not going to listen to panel speakers necessarily.
Yeah, it's always those when you dip out of a speaker and you just go to run to the bathroom real quick. It's on your way back. You run into somebody in the hallway, and those serendipitous meetings are the entire reason you go. Speaking of monetizing this podcast, that's our monetization heuristic. Like, you just have to subscribe to this podcast. We're out here, Corey's driving through the night trying to make it to the show. We need to afford some, paint for his walls because they're hideous. These are the things we're working on to improve the show. But all we ask from you, our pirate pinky promise, is for you to subscribe to the show.